When I opened my front door, 3 men stood there looking like they'd raided a bargain bin of tactical gear online and decided it made them authorities. One clutched a clipboard like it was a badge of honor, another had a smug grin plastered on his face, and the third stood rigid, flexing like he'd been cast for some bad cop drama. "Sir, you're in violation of HOA Regulation 7B, clipboard guy said flatly, unauthorized possession of firearms within community limits. I blinked at him. HOA. I didn't even have a Homeowners Association. Before I could respond, clipboard guy flipped open a badge that looked like it came from a cheap Halloween set and said, "We'll need you to hand over your weapons voluntarily." I'm not someone who shouts, but I am someone who knows how to end a standoff in under 3 seconds if things go sideways. And right then, every instinct I had screamed, this isn't official. This is a setup. They'd picked the wrong house to mess with. I smiled politely. Sure thing. Mind waiting here a moment? I stepped back inside, not for paperwork like they assumed, but for my tablet, the one connected to the exterior cameras I'd installed after a weird break-in down the block last year, and a gutted pen I'd converted into a discreet microphone. Old habits die hard. From the live camera feed, I watched them whispering to each other, clearly thrown off by my delay. One guy pulled out his phone, typing furiously while glancing around like he was expecting backup. That's when I knew this wasn't some group of idiots playing dress-up. This was organized. Then I noticed the car. A matte black SUV parked 2 streets over. No plates. No logos. Just sitting there like it thought it was invisible. I'd clocked it earlier during my morning run. So, I hit record. Audio. Video. Everything. When I walked back out, I had my game face on. If they were trying to pull a fake HOA hustle, they'd just chosen the wrong porch. With a smike, I handed clipboard guy a blank sheet of paper. Mind flashing your credentials again? He squinted. We already showed you. Great, I said, keeping my tone light. Because I just got off the phone with the actual HOA. You know, the one that doesn't exist. And guess what? They've never heard of you. Flexboy stepped forward, muscles tight, like his presence alone would intimidate me. You sure you want to make this difficult? I didn't even blink. Buddy, this is me making it easy. That's when the man with the phone shifted, half turning like he was about to leave. I caught it, the way he mouthed something, a name, maybe a code, and just like that, I knew they weren't acting solo. So, I let them walk. I gave them a calm smile. Conversation's over. Step on my property again, and we'll have a very different kind of discussion. They strutted off, pretending to look confident. But they had no idea I was already tracking the SUV through my cameras. I'd logged the make, model, and even the dent on the rear bumper. Calling the cops? Not a chance. I was calling their bluff. 10 minutes later, I was on the road, hoodie swapped for a ball cap, GoPro rigged under my dash. I slid into my old Tacoma like it was 2007, and I was back running wrecking overseas. They didn't spot me. Rookie mistake, they never even checked their 6. I tailed them quietly as they wound through 2 neighborhoods, looped a strip mall, and finally turned into a rundown industrial park behind a self-storage facility. Subtle as a car alarm at midnight. I parked half a block away, zoom lens ready, and watched. That's when things got interesting. Another man appeared, older, bald, wearing a cheap suit that screamed failed car salesman. He handed clipboard guy what looked like a folder and a stack of cash. No attempt at secrecy. Just a quiet handoff like a Craigslist deal gone wrong. I caught every second on camera. And in that moment, it clicked. This wasn't just about me. These guys were running a coordinated scam, posing as HOA enforcers, shaking down homeowners, targeting people they thought were too vulnerable or too scared to fight back. But here's the thing, I don't do fair. For the next 2 days, I stayed in the shadows, tracking that SUV twice more. Same pattern every time. Knock on a door, flash a fake badge, cite some bogus violation, and leave with either threats or an envelope of cash. And what hit me hardest? The people they went after. A single mom. An elderly couple. A guy in a wheelchair who looked like he hadn't left his porch in weeks. They weren't picking random houses. They were hunting for easy prey. They preyed on the easy ones. People too trusting or too isolated to question a phony compliance letter, folks with no backup to challenge them. What they were running wasn't some petty con, it was a full-scale extortion racket disguised as community enforcement. And there was no way I was letting that slide. I started building my case piece by piece, screenshots, license plates, side-by-side comparisons of legitimate HOA documents against the garbage they were handing out. I even pulled footage of them tripping over their own lies. One guy called it Code 7B. The next time, his partner said Violation 14C. Sloppy, but sloppy doesn't mean harmless. These guys were dangerous. The deeper I dug, the more obvious their game became. They weren't just shaking people down. They were mapping homes, trying to figure out who was armed, and then pressuring them to disarm. That's when it got personal. See, my firearms aren't just possessions. They are part of my history, tools I trained with, tools that saved lives, including my own. So when I realized these clowns were trying to scare regular people into giving up their protection, it stopped being just fraud. It became a threat. I kept thinking about the old vet who lived down the block. I'd seen him at the range years ago. Now he was standing in his doorway, shaking, clutching one of those fake notices like it was radioactive. They told him he had 72 hours to comply or risk a forced removal of his weapons. And he believed them. That was the moment the mission changed. It wasn't just about protecting my own house anymore. It was about every house they'd hit, and making sure the next door they knocked on would be their last mistake. So I laid the bait. I set up hidden cameras, wired audio triggers, and even taped a fake final notice to my own door just to lure them back. I wanted them to think they still had the upper hand. They took it. It was a Thursday afternoon, sun blazing, kids riding bikes 2 doors down, when they strutted back onto my property. Clipboard guy walked up my driveway like he owned it, flashing that same plastic badge, wearing that same smeg, as if we hadn't already been through this dance. This time, I didn't answer the door. Instead, I let my cameras do the work, one hidden in the porch light, another tucked in the flower bed, and a third planted in a hideous lawn gnome I'd bought specifically for this stunt. Ugly thing, but it gave me the perfect angle. They slid a new final notice under my door, this one dressed up with a fake court seal and an arbitrary deadline, and then leaned toward my ring cam. "You've been warned," Clipboard guy said. "Comply or we escalate." I almost laughed. Escalate? Please. I wrote the book on escalation. I waited until they were halfway down the block before I moved, grabbed my gear, slid into my truck, and followed at a casual distance. This time, I wasn't just gathering evidence. I was about to expose their little operation in real time. They led me straight back to their hideout, same decrepit industrial lot tucked behind the storage units. I parked across the street, gloves on, hat pulled low, GoPro running under my jacket, tablet in hand streaming live feeds from my house straight to a private cloud. Then, I pressed send. Every clip, every still frame, every second of video showing them threatening neighbors, waving fake badges, lying to my face, all of it went out. To a local watchdog group, to a couple of veteran buddies with security connections, and to reporters I knew wouldn't sit on it. Then, just for fun, I sent the package to them. I'd pulled their burner email from one of the fake notices, compliance_authority@outlook.com. Real professional. Subject line, smile. You're live. 5 minutes later, I saw chaos erupt. Clipboard guy came storming out of the building, barking into his phone. Bald boss held a box into the back of the SUV like he was scrubbing evidence. One of the others tilted his head to the sky, searching for drones. Not yet, genius. And then they panicked. The SUV roared out of the lot, tires screeching like they just knocked over a bank. I followed. No more subtlety this time. They blew through intersections, doubled back down side streets, trying to shake a tail they didn't realize wasn't just me. 2 of my buddies, ex-Marines, brothers in arms who owed me favors and lived for adrenaline, were shadowing them from separate cars. We didn't box them in. Not yet. We just guided them where we wanted. Eventually, they turned into a cul-de-sac. Dead end. Too late. They realized it. I rolled my truck sideways at the mouth of the street, stepped out slow. No weapon. No shouting, just my tablet glowing in my hand. I held the screen up like a mirror, every incriminating frame queued up. There they were, standing on my porch, threatening me, shaking down neighbors, stuffing envelopes into their pockets. "Game's over," I said. Their faces drained of color, silent, like someone had yanked the power cord out of their bravado. "Oh, I'm not done," I added, stepping forward. "You like targeting people who can't fight back? You like shaking down old folks?" Clipboard guy opened his mouth, thought better of it, and closed it. Smart. I flipped through the footage like a slideshow of their worst decisions: extortion, impersonating officials, fraud, intimidation with firearms. "You know what all this adds up to?" I asked. No answer. "Jail," I said flatly. "The kind where nobody calls you sir." Bald Boss tried to act unfazed. "You don't have any proof that'll stick," he said, voice shaky. I grinned. I didn't need a courtroom. I needed reach. While we stood there in that dead-end street, the footage was already spreading. 3 local Facebook groups, a couple of neighborhood forums, and a subreddit that devours scam stories for breakfast. The comment section was blowing up. Who needs a badge when you have the internet? By the time these guys realized just how deep they were in, the first car rolled up behind mine. Not law enforcement. Worse. A grandma they threatened. She climbed out of a beige Corolla wearing Crocs, a faded "Don't Tread on Me" t-shirt, a phone in one hand, and a tiny poodle in the other. Small dog, big attitude. She marched straight up beside me like we'd choreographed it. "That's the one," she said, pointing her phone at Bald Boss. "The guy who told me my porch flag violated regulations." I nodded. She shifted her glare to him. "You threatened to confiscate my husband's service weapon. He fought at Normandy. You ever even fought a parking ticket?" Then she looked at me. "You recording this?" I held up my tablet. "Streaming live." Then more cars arrived. One. Then another. Within 5 minutes, half the neighborhood had gathered around the cul-de-sac like it was the season finale of some reality show called HOA's Most Wanted. Phones out. Voices raised. Someone even brought popcorn. No exaggeration. One of the fake enforcers twitched, like he was about to run. One of my Marine buddies, calm, broad-shouldered, and enjoying every second, stepped out of his truck and said evenly, "I wouldn't." Clipboard guy froze. Pale. Trembling. Bald Boss just stared at the ground, probably calculating how quickly he could disappear and change his name. Too late for that. The real yelling didn't start with me. It started with the neighbors. The single mom they tried to intimidate with child endangerment threats over a locked gun safe. She showed up waving their fake notice like a script, reading it aloud with enough theatrical flair to earn a Judge Judy cameo. The crowd booed, recorded, streamed. One guy live broadcasted the whole scene to a veterans group and tagged every local news station he could think of. And the scammers? Cornered. They couldn't leave without pushing through 30 angry neighbors and a wall of smartphone cameras. Clipboard guy finally broke. "This is harassment. You people have no authority." I stepped forward. Calm. Steady. "Neither did you." Bald Boss tried to pivot, his voice sharp and shaky. "We were just following orders." Classic move. Nobody was buying it. Especially not the older man who quietly walked up, Vietnam vet jacket zipped to the collar, calm as a Sunday sunrise. He stopped in front of them, his voice even but sharp as glass. "You ever try to strip someone's rights again," he said, "you'd better bring more than a clipboard." The entire crowd erupted in applause. And then came the sirens. Not because I'd called them, but because someone in the crowd flagged the live stream to a deputy who recognized one of the clowns from a separate fraud case. 2 cruisers rolled in, quiet but unmistakable. The fake enforcers tried to spin it, claimed they were victims, claimed this was all a misunderstanding, claimed they were the ones under threat. It didn't work. One officer scrolled through the footage on my tablet, then looked straight at Clipboard guy. "You're aware impersonating a housing official is a felony in this state, right?" I swear, I saw the blood drain from his face. The cuffs clicked, one by one, right there in front of everyone. Bald Boss tried to make a desperate plea. "We were just trying to keep the community safe." And the crowd howled. Safe from what? "Crooked mailboxes," someone shouted. Another voice chimed in. "Next time, sell cookies like the Girl Scouts, man." As they were loaded into the cruisers, the poodle barked furiously, like it was handing down the final verdict. And me? I stood there, arms folded, tablet glowing, watching those taillights fade down the street. 2 days later, the neighborhood threw a block party. Not kidding. Folding chairs, burgers on the grill, even a bounce house for the kids. Someone made a sign that said, "Knock knock, the door of accountability." I laughed harder than I had in years. Neighbors who barely exchanged nods before were now swapping stories, checking in on each other. That old vet, he's got a brand new security system installed, paid for by 3 families he'd never spoken to until that week. And the grandma with the poodle, she's basically our mayor now. Runs the group chat like a drill sergeant, emojis and all. As for me, I clipped the footage and posted it online. Not for clout, but because people need to know what to watch for. Scammers thrive in silence. But the second one person stands up, everyone else finds their spine too. I've been trained to handle threats, sure. But this time, the real victory was showing an entire neighborhood how to fight smart and fight together. So yeah, if some wannabe in a knockoff vest shows up demanding compliance, ask questions, record everything, and maybe keep a camera hidden in a garden gnome. Trust me, underrated move. I didn't need a badge. I didn't need a courtroom. All it took was a plan, a few good neighbors, and an ironclad paper trail. And if those fake enforcers are watching this from whatever bargain bin legal team they've scraped together, I hope you saved your own copies. I've got backups. Oh, and if you love watching scammers get dismantled with facts and community fire, there's a whole playlist waiting for you. Drop your city in the comments, and tell me if your HOA's ever tried pulling this kind of garbage. You might just be one camera away from your own ending.